Okay, so I will share the screen. Can you see the screen? See my screen?
I see it.
All right, good. So what are we talking about today? I think we're up to the Psalms. Yeah. All right, so oh, let's do Bible versions before we move forward. All right, so this is the Hebrew Bible I learned on the Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia, which is a very scholarly version of the Hebrew Bible. Most of your Hebrew Bibles are printed without the pointing, but this one has the pointing for people that don't grow up speaking Hebrew and studying it. Just for people that Hebrew is a second language to them. Let's see. I think that looks like it. Yes. So you can see there's commentary at the bottom. It's printed right to left. The big letters are consonants. The small dots around it are the vowels that were put in later. We've talked about this. All right, so this is, let's, oops. Let's look at a regular unpointed text. Okay, oh no, that's still pointed, dang it. That's the problem with the points, they only appear later. Maybe this? There it is. Okay, so if you're Jewish, you've been going to Hebrew school all your life, and or better at Hebrew than me, or if you live in Palestine and you use Hebrew as your language, this is the way the text looks, and then you have to fill in the dots yourself. Okay, so there comes a point when they want to start translating scriptures, and the one that's important for our purposes is the Septuagint. Okay, this is the version I have. It's the Blue Bible. So this is in Greek, and the legend goes that they needed a Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible. And so they got 70 scholars who spent 70 days translating it, and they came up with 70 different, separate copies of the translation, all of which were exactly the same. And if you know anything about transcribing, that would be a miracle. VHS is so Hebrew, the official version of the scriptures that pretty much everybody uses is the Masoretic text, which was fixed by the Masoretes. The one I have is the Biblical Hebraica Stuttgartensia Biblia. But it's still the Masoretic text, right? So the second version, the first translation, because 70 scholars spent 70 days making 70 copies, Septuagint is based on the Hebrew word for 70. And so it is abbreviated LXX. And if you come across this in your rating like MT, LXX, that's what they're referring to. Now, the interesting thing for us in the Christian tradition, for me, and you if you're in it, this is the Bible that they used in the New Testament, right there. Because the New Testament is written in Greek. Where's the background? I guess we don't have it. And so when they quote from the Bible, they're quoting from the Septuagint. And as a result of the Christians using the Septuagint, both in their worship and in their writing, the Hebrews of the time, later in the first century, suppressed it and turned away from it. Even though it was their translation originally, they didn't like what Christians were doing with it. So they went back to the Masoretic text, which they still use today. I'm sure they have translations, but this is what you officially use if you're Jewish from then on. And the Christian Old Testament was the Septuagint. And it included more books and more chapters because the Hebrew scriptures are limited to Hebrew and some Aramaic. The Septuagint has some stuff that was originally written in Greek, like the parts of Daniel that we'll be getting to. Oh, did we see the Septuagint? I don't think so. Let's see what that brings up. Is this it? Yeah, that's not working. Okay, this looks like a manuscript form of the Septuagint. The Codex Vaticanus, which is proper because this was what they would have used until they forgot Greek. Okay, there we go. And this is an uncial manuscript on parchment. So they're writing in what we would call capital letters. It's on parchment as opposed to papyrus, and it is in scripto continua. Do you remember what that means? No breaks between the words. Remember, the first punctuation was a space. All right, so that's your Septuagint page. The Vulgate is the Latin translation. of the Bible, completed by Jerome. There, that green one is the one I have. Biblia Sacra Vulgata. Oh, and this is Greek on the left and the Vulgate on the right. Coolio. Where did that get away to? He said to him, Nicodemus, how am I able? Oh, how can I be born again? Cool. So anyway, this is the Bible of the Roman Catholic Church. To this day, when the Pope issues his edicts, the most official version of them is in Latin, and they quote the Vulgate when they quote the Bible. Where's my, here we go. And you may notice that the word Vulgate looks a little like the word vulgar, and they come from the same Latin word vulgus, which means common. So as people lost their ability to speak Greek, because Latin, as the Romans went around the ancient world, they spoke in Greek often, especially the educated classes. But in the West, this ability was lost, and Latin was the common language. So the Vulgate is the common language. Then we're not going into all of the twists and turns of the biblical translations in English. The one that we're going to use is the King James Version. That's because it, for 400 years, was the literary translation of the English Bible. So it's the one that casts the big shadow from all the way from Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan to Martin Luther King. When they quote the Bible, they quote the King James Version. All right, so those are the important texts to keep in mind. I want to set these side by side. So we can see the way that one influenced the other. Where did I put that? Probably Bible. Let's out of some of this. It's just amazing how many pages you can get open at one time in a browser. Okay, so here's the Hebrew text with counting, for those of us who can't read without it, which goes from right to left. So this is the first word of the Hebrew scriptures. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim va'et haaretz, which is translated, in beginning created God the heavens and the earth. Now the thing that's great about Hebrew, if you're learning it as a foreign language, is that it is a word order language, which is so very rare. In English, we're a word order language too. And so we have subject, verb, object as the normal order of a sentence. Hebrew turns it around slightly. In beginning created God. So there's the subject after the verb. So it's Yoda speak, right? In beginning created God. And this little thing here, eth, va'eth, that's the and at the beginning, the wall. If I could mark off one letter, that would be great. But I can't. There it goes. And that is the signal that the word after it is the direct object. So in beginning created God the heavens and the earth. And so that's the Genesis 1:1 in Hebrew. Now Septuagint, and we're moving back to our old left to right. This is the full alphabet with vowels and everything. And then diacritical marks like the accents and breathing marks and stuff like that. They wouldn't have had that in that Uncio version. These are added later too. All right, so how's it sound? In arche epoiesin hathias ton uranon kai tain gain. In beginning made God the heaven and the earth. All right, Latin. In principio creavit Deus caelum et terram. Now I want you to notice something about Latin. You can already almost read Latin. In, what's the English translation of in?
In.
Yes, oh, very good. Principio. We get the word principle, so it would be beginning. That's not too big a leap. How about creavit? What's the translation? Yeah, created. Deus, you might already know that one. God, right? Caelum.
Heaven.
Heaven. Et is the and terra.
The earth.
Mother Earth. So see, of this, we know this word, we kind of know this word, we know this word, we kind of know this word. Maybe not that one. Et shows up in stuff still. And terra, we know. We've heard that as a name for earth. And then King James, in the beginning, so we add the thee. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And we made heaven singular the way that Greek and Hebrew also, Greek and Latin do. But this is a word order language. So the words are in a specific order for a specific reason. Kind of the same in English. But look at Greek. You could literally take that sentence on a piece of paper, start slicing it up into bits, pull the bits out of a hat, and it would mean exactly the same thing. So what do they do with all this freedom when it comes time to translate with the word order? What kind of creative stuff do they come up with their word order compared to Hebrew? Is it a lot different or is it the same? In beginning created God the heavens and the earth. In beginning created God the heaven and the earth. So tell me, is that different or is that very, very similar?
Similar. The only difference will be the heaven isn't pluralized.
Right, we made it singular. How about Latin?
Yeah.
Latin's the same, right?
Yeah.
So why would they do that?
You probably want to keep it as close as the original text as possible.
Yes, it's the word of God. We want to change it as little as possible as we bring it across the gap from one language into another. And so that will hold true for the King James as well, that it's very close to, it stays very close to the Hebrew text whenever possible. And that means that if you if you go back, like if you've been studying older English, almost everything we studied before the King James Bible was written is in poetic form, and that's for a reason. Our prose style pretty much sucked. But over the centuries, as the King James had its influence on our language, our prose style started converging with that in the with that of the Hebrew. So it got better. That's one argument I've read. And I find it somewhat persuasive because you heard it every Sunday, right? All right, so let's get to the rules of poetry in Hebrew. In Hebrew, unlike English, Hebrew poetry does not follow meter or what's at the end, rhyme scheme. Hebrew and Latin tend to avoid rhyme scheme, but they very much have meter in their poetry. It makes all that hard to translate. The Psalms translate based on what they call here thought rhyme, or parallelism is a more common word for it, so that one clause is balanced by another, by another, by another. He has founded it upon the seas and established it upon the waters. And that's called synonymous parallelism. That's your starting place, where the two lines mean pretty much the same thing. Seas and waters, same. Founded, established, same. So when you have a setup like that, that's called synonymous. Antithetical parallelism is the opposite. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. So when you're looking for synonymous, keep an eye out for and, in words like and. When you're looking for antithetical, look for but. Pretty easy, right? It's fairly simple rules. And it means that Hebrew poetry, of all the poetries we'll look at, is the easiest to translate because you're translating idea for idea, clause for clause, rather than trying to figure out how to get that pun in there. I mean, one of the few ones that I remember, woman is called woman because she's taken from man, woe, man, man. In English, ish is the Hebrew word for man, isha is the Hebrew word for woman. So she's called isha because she was taken from ish. That pun actually comes through in English where it doesn't so easily in Latin and Greek. They use the word virago because she was taken from vir, which virago is like a manly woman, which is kind of like Latin for butch. So they use it, but it's not a very comfortable use of the term in Genesis. Anyway, progressive parallelism. They call it stare-like, who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scornful. I would probably call all those synonymous, but they like stare-like. Climactic means you pick up the first idea from the first line, repeat it and expand it. Given to the Lord, O ye mighty ones, given to the Lord glory and strength. So be finished is the sentence that was left unfinished in A. Now, introverted, what a horrible word. Because he has set his love upon me, therefore I'll deliver him. I will set him on high because he has known my name. So 1 and 4 go together and 2 and 3 go together. Does any of you know what that's actually called? Rather than introverted parallelism.
No, I avoid poetry like the plague.
Well, any budding poets in here who it's called chiasm because the structure resembles the Greek letter chi. In English, we call it an X. Let's see if we see any examples. Here we go. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. JFK. So the chiasm is structured like that. A, B, B, A. And you find that in Hebrew poetry at times, although not, I think, today, but we'll see. All right. We just did 3 Psalms as representatives of the rest. There's a lot more complexity in the Psalms than we're going over. Like, is it a lyric? Is it a praise psalm? Is it a, what's it called when they're stomping their feet and cursing somebody? Imprecation. Anyway, we're not going to go into all that. Just know that this is a much bigger topic. Blessed is the man, okay, that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. So we know how they identified it, and what was that?
Yes, no, yes, stare-like.
Progressive, stare-like. I would probably myself just put it as regular old synonymous. And because the first one is not doing something, instead of and, we see nor here. So don't let that confuse you. All right. His delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. What is that? That is so annoying. Oh, okay. So what are those 2 sentences? What kind of parallelism?
That one, cause and effect.
Delight is in the law of the Lord. In his law doth he meditate. Oh, shit. I think that's a chiasm. How did I not notice this? A synonymous chiasm. Delight is in the law, and in his law doth he meditate. So you've got meditate. Ah, fuck you. We can do it, I think. How did I not notice? I've been teaching this passage for years, and I never noticed it. Okay, so this is a chiasm, folks. Take a good look at it. We won't see a lot of them unless I wake up. His delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. So it's synonymous because of the and, but the structure is chiastic. Wow, what do y'all think? Now, these are synonymous, or stare-like, if you prefer. These are synonymous, but what's the relationship between 1 and 2? You've got one man not doing this, but doing the other thing. What do we call that?
That's the anti-parallelism.
Right, antithetical. So you see how complicated this can get. You've got synonymous or stare-like, synonymous, but they're put them together and it's antithetical. So there's a bigger structure going here. Okay. So this is connected by an and. So what are we expecting this to be?
Synonymous.
Synonymous. In some kind of way. And he shall be like a tree. Now, what do we call that image where we use the word like or as?
Simile.
Yes, simile. If you leave out the like, it becomes a
Metaphor.
metaphor. Very good. It should be like a tree planted by the rivers of water that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf shall not wither, and whatsoever he doth shall prosper. So how do these relate to each other? Are they antithetical?
No.
Sometimes the simplest answer is the best. Look for the word and.
Synonymous.
Synonymous, of course. He's like a tree planted by the water, brings forth the fruit when it's time. It doesn't wither up. One year we had a heat wave / drought that lasted from May to August. And by July, all the trees, their leaves were just brown and dead because they had dried up. Even the pine trees, North Louisiana just looked horrible. So if you've got water, your weak leaf doesn't wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. Now, which of these four things is tree-like behavior, and which does not match? Oh, this is like Sesame Street. One of these things is not like the others. Planted by water, is that something tree-like? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Is bringing forth fruit tree-like?
Yes.
Yes. Is not withering your leaves tree-like?
No.
Do trees have leaves?
Yes.
Yes.
Is whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. Does that sound like a tree?
No.
Maybe an ant, right? So we've left our metaphor after wither, and we've gone back to, okay, what do I mean by all this poetic stuff? I mean, whatever you do will prosper. Now, 4, the ungodly are not so. So what's the relationship between 4 and 2 and 3? Look for the words not
Antithetic?
so. What's that?
Would it be antithetic?
Totally antithetical. But are like the chaff which the wind driveth away. Now that may be, it completes the idea. Maybe it's climactic. They're not like these, but they are like this. Maybe it's just a simple. So these two are parallel. Yeah, maybe this completes the thought. Okay, therefore, and this could be climactic, right? Because they're like the chaff. Therefore, the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. So how do those relate to each other?
4 and 5.
Yeah, well, the 2 parts of 5. Ungodly shall not stand in the judgment. Sinners shall not stand in the congregation of the righteous. Is that antithetical with each other?
No, it's sort of
Either
synonymous.
Yeah, either synonymous, or you could make the argument it's progressive, because once you get past the judgment, what do? If you're successful, you go stand in the congregation of the righteous, which would get old after 1,000,000 years or so, but you know, whatever. But then these two all parallel each other, but then they're the opposite of these. See how that works? Now the end of it, for the Lord knoweth the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. So how do those relate to each other?
That'd be antithetic again.
Totally antithetical. And if you notice, this summarizes the rest of the poem. Okay, I wanted to talk about Hebrew style. Do I have that there? Ah, cool. I wanted to find a parallel somewhere on the internet of Psalm 8 translated by Milton versus King James Version. And I found it on my website. Isn't that great? Okay. So how was the King James Version brought into existence? Does anybody know that story?
Didn't King James want his own translation that was a bit more eloquent or poetic than previous ones?
Well, let's say less politically incorrect. The popular translation that was being used when he took office was the Geneva Bible, which had been translated in Switzerland illegally. And it had an unfortunate tendency to translate the word melech, not into king, but into tyrant. And the Bible thumpers used it to thump people like King James, and he did not like that. And also some people had approached him and asked for a new translation. Now, did he do the translation himself? King James said, yes, translation, good idea. Is that the way kings do things? Okay, I'm going to do this myself.
No.
No, what do kings do?
Have scholars do it instead.
He
What
would
was that?
commission someone to do it, wouldn't he?
Yes, you appoint a committee. That's how government works. And he got all these, some of them were scholars, but some of them were, you know, I mean, they were all educated, right? You got your Greek and your Latin, and you got your good education. Even with somebody with little Latin and less Greek, like William Shakespeare, wound up on the committee because he's a great English wordsmith. But anyway, our committee is known for the high quality of their output. Generally not. There is a saying that a camel is a horse that was designed by a committee. I know, let's give it a hump. Why would you do that? Yeah, because humps are cool. But the King James Version came out as great literature. So let's look at, and here's John Milton, the actual, well, between him and Shakespeare, the two greatest poets of the English language. O Lord, our Lord, King James says, how excellent is thy name above the earth, who has set thy glory above the heavens. O Jehovah, Lord, how wondrous, great, and glorious is thy name through all the earth. So as above the heavens thy praise to set out of the tender mouths of latest earth. Okay, in the King James, out of the mouth of babes and sucklings hast thou ordained strength because of thine enemies, that thou mightest still the enemy and the avenger. When I consider the heavens, the work of thy fingers, the moon and the stars, which thou hast ordained, what is man that thou art mindful of him, or the son of man that thou visitest him? For thou hast made him a little lower than the angels and hast crowned him with glory and honor. Okay, back to Milton. Out of the mouths of babes and sucklings thou hast founded strength because of all thy foes, to stint the enemy and slack the avenger's brow, that bends his rage thy providence to oppose. When I behold thy heavens, thy fingers art, the moon and stars which thou bright hast set in the pure firmament, then saith my heart, oh, what is man that thou rememberest yet, or thinkest upon him, or of man begot that thou visitest him, and of him art found. Scarce to be less than the gods, thou madest his lot with honor, and with state thou hast him crowned. Okay, so which of these would you put down to be the better poem or the better translation, the King James Version or the Milton Version?
King James Version.
Which one you like, King James?
Yeah.
I like the King James too. When I do this in class, I have people raise their hands, and it's always about 50-50.
It's simple and to the point.
Yes, which is exactly it. That's exactly my point. This is a pure translation, right? The way we did with Genesis, this is what we're doing with Psalm 8. Let's just take the Psalm and translate it. What is Milton having to do? O Jehovah, Lord, how wondrous great. Is that right? O Jehovah, Lord, how wondrous great, and glorious is thy name through all the earth. Okay, so as above the heavens thy praise to set, out of the tender mouths of latest earth. 10 syllables on average per line. Out of the mouths of babes and sucklings, thou hast founded strength because of all thy foes. What's our meter here? 10, emphasis on the second syllable. We use it in Shakespeare's plays. We use it in Milton's Paradise Lost. We use it in sonnets. We use it everywhere, all the time. Okay, remember this, iambic pentameter. It is the most popular English verse. Great earth set, hearth, thou foes, brow oppose. So it's an A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D rhyme scheme. So he's trying to make this psalm into a singable psalm in English. And therefore he's using rhyme scheme, he's using meter, he's using all that other stuff. And he's got to twist Psalm 8 to fit all of these. And so you find extra words put in over the simple, straightforward, direct version of Psalm 8. And so what makes the King James Version superior is the fact that they stick so close to the original Hebrew. Whereas Milton's varying from it, and therefore he winds up losing stuff that actually comes across better in the King James. Although if you're singing it, I guess it doesn't matter. Okay, let's take a look at 23. Did I shrink that? The Lord is my shepherd. Now, what do we call that?
Metaphor.
Yes, metaphor. The Lord is like my shepherd would be a simile again. Do you see the difference? The Lord is my shepherd versus the Lord, he's kind of like my shepherd, dude. So the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. What do we call, what's the relationship between those two?
Seems like a synthetic parallelism.
Maybe synthetic or progressive. Yeah, it does. Synthetic, I like. You could make an argument for either one of those. Because the Lord is my shepherd, therefore I shall not want. See, it completes the thought. All right, so let's focus on other stuff with this one. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Okay, so how do these four clauses relate to each other? Okay, just make some guess so we can get on with life. Lie down in green grass, leads beside the still waters, restores my soul, leads me in the paths of righteousness. How do these relate?
Is it stair-like?
What are you saying?
Stair-like?
It could be stair-like, yeah, or it could just be synonymous. So, look at this. Is the metaphor holding? Is lying down in green grass something a sheep does?
Yeah.
Yeah. Leads beside still waters. Is that a sheep? Restores my soul. Is that sheep-like?
Not really.
Not so much. Leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Do sheep worry about paths of righteousness?
No.
No. So we have left our metaphor here the way we did before. So here's the poetry, but what am I trying to say? And it's still poetic. Also, there's something going on here that I want to talk about because they brought it over into English. It might have been there before. Okay, paths of righteousness. Notice that righteousness is a noun, but it's being used adjectively because of, path of righteousness. Now, if we wanted the adjective form of righteousness, what word would we use?
Righteous.
Right, he leads me in righteous paths. Okay, would that work? Probably. Is it as poetic?
No, I guess not.
I would guess not too. Now this is, I mean, we have perfectly respectable system of adjectives in English. So why are we doing this weird thing? Because that's how Hebrew does. They have very few adjective forms. Instead, they have an adjectival construct where you have the word path and this little, well, it's a high hyphen. So instead of a hyphen in the middle, and it's more like a dash. So path of righteousness. And that tells your reader, okay, this noun is being used as an adjective to modify the first noun. What is that? Psalm 23:3. Let's check it out. Well, let's do the next one before we do that. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. So do you see that walking through the valley of the shadow of death is kind of the opposite of path of righteousness? Because that sounds bad, right?
Yeah.
And so though is setting us up for an antithesis. Well, with what's to come, not with what's previous. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Now, suddenly we're back in the metaphor again. So what's that, 4? Let's look at 23:4 in various editions to see what they do with that, because it quickly becomes very complicated. So here are, we've got valley, we've got shadow, and we've got death. But these are used adjectively, the valley of the shadow of death. Now, how can we turn that around and put that into what we would usually use in English? It's very hard. Do they have a page of versions? Here we go. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, they stick with it. Oh, though I go through the valley of deep shade. Okay, what's happened to our poetry there?
There's been a little bit of
It's gone.
of change.
Yeah, even when I walk through the darkest valley. Now, the valley of the shadow of death, that carries an implication that it's not only dark, but there's something bad here, right? And you're losing all this. Don't walk through the darkest valley, pass through death, dark ravines, darkest valley. Well, here we go. Darby, which is an older one, valley of the shadow of death, valley of the shadow of death, deepest darkness, deepest darkness. Valley of death, valley of the shadow of death, valley of the shadow, valley of the shadow, valley of the shadow, dark valley, death valley, capitalized. Even when the way goes through the death valley. I mean, That's kind of more accurate as far as getting the death in there, but where's the poetry? Darkest valley, valley of the shadow of death. Darkest valley, darkest valley, darkest valley. Gates Mavet. All right, there we go. We just won't translate it. We'll transliterate it. The midst of the shadow of death. Valley of the shadow of death. I would say the preponderance, in the midst of shadow of death. So we take, it's an older, really old translation. And once again, deep shade. I'm going into some deep shade, dude. But when you're kind of walking around through the desert, a deep shade is kind of nice, right? So to me, it looks like a lot of times we get the best result when we stay closest to the Hebrew. I don't know. Does anybody prefer deep shade? I don't. All right, let's finish this out. That prepares the table before me in the presence of my enemies. Again, is that something a sheep does? The sheep would be on the table cooked, right? We'd be calling it mutton. So we've exited our metaphor again. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. All these parallel, but all these human activities. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So that would be either synonymous or climactic if, going to heaven is, the next phase. All right, any questions about that? It's something to keep your eye out, because now that we have these English translations, this stuff has just permeated the language. Oh, that's what I wanted to show you. Okay, so I have a dream speech. This was not part of his original speech. This was a peroration that he had put into various sermons over the years, and I think it was Mahalia Jackson was behind him saying, "Tell him about the dream, Martin. Tell him about the dream." I still have a dream. It's a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of slaves and the sons of former slaves owners will be able to sit down at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even in the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. How do these relate to each other, these sentences? I have a dream that in Georgia, I have a dream in Mississippi, sons of slave owners sit down together, transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. How do those relate?
They're
That's
they're
it.
synonym.
Synonymous.
Synonymous.
There you go. You got it.
I'm not good at poetry.
Well, and I lost my cheat sheet. Here we go. So this is a bunch of synonymous parallelism. Where did he get that? He got it from 4 centuries of English sermons being rooted in this Bible. So the Bible starts to come over into English. And because they didn't recognize the rules of Hebrew poetry, they printed this up, the Psalms up, as prose. And so these rules didn't so much transform English poetry, it transformed English prose, especially the more deeply you think about and read and structure your own language around the Bible, the more it starts to sound like Hebrew poetry. So let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening and Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. So you see synonymous, right? The I Have a Dream speech is a Hebrew poem because that's what preachers do. One of the things preachers do. It's the good ones. All right, let's move on to Job. And where do we open up in Job? What's our opening scene?
A good old bed.
Where is that?
Uh,
No, I mean, where is the scene? Where are we located?
oh. I want to say in the beginning it was in the heavens.
Yes. And what's going on?
This one was God was sort of just talking about how great Job was and how
Well, before
perfect.
we get to Job, we need to figure out what's going on there. Now, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan among them. What do we call that? God's holding court. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
And who's there?
All the angels as well as
Not angels.
Well,
What does
Satan.
it say?
Satan specifically.
Before we get
mentions
to
him.
Satan, who's there? Verse 6.
Oh, sick. The sons of God.
Right. And what does that make Satan?
That makes Satan a son of God.
Right.
Which makes sense if you're also basing off stuff like Paradise Fall story.
Paradise Lost.
Paradise Lost. Yeah, I always say false for some reason.
There was probably a movie like that. All right. Let's see if we can find this. Ooh, oh, you're so big. Why are you so tiny? Ugh. Ah, here we go. Oh, phooey. Satan is after me today, folks. I'm sure I have a Hebrew font, but figuring out where everything goes and getting the pointing, it's easier just copy and paste. Oh, but that's not right. Crap. Okay, let's try that again. Let's try Job 1:1. What verse is, oh, Job 1, sorry. What verse is Satan in? Anybody?
So yeah, that would be
6.
Okay, thank you. 4, 5, 6. Here we go. Oh, it's over there. And the sons of God, and here we go. All right, so that is the Hebrew word for Satan. Except it's not, oh, I don't like that. That's better. Can I blow it up? Can y'all see that all right? Oh, let's try this. There, is that better? All right, so this first letter is the Hebrew letter that means the. It's the article. That's their version of the. So this is Sa, Shin, Tau, Nu. Satan, and it's been pointed with the vowels. So it's not Satan who comes to God. It's the Satan. Because word is not a name. It's a word. It means adversary. So he has a role in the court of God's justice when he's doing that, as opposed to holding court as a king. It can get kind of confusing. So God is the judge. Oh, crap. And then you've got the defendant, who is got charges against the defendant going before God. And then you've got the adversary is actually what we would call today the district attorney, or the state's attorney sometimes. So is this a setup where the Satan is the enemy of God?
No,
No,
not really.
he's doing his job. God said, I need a Satan, I need a district attorney to bring charges against people, because God really likes that sort of thing, right? And so then it'll be, so who's the defendant here?
Would that be the sons of God, or would it just be God?
No. Who are we talking about and accusing?
Oh, Job.
Job. So this is a semi-legal, although it seems more like they're probably all drunk and, talking about people. And but look at this guy. He's awesome, right? And then what does the adversary say?
Take away his family and fortune?
Right. Of course, he's being super nice about you because he's got all this stuff that you've given. Take away that, and he will curse you. And so God lets him, kills his kids, kills all the animals, takes all the land. Everything just happens all at once. It's terrible. But does Job, curse God the way he thinks he will?
No.
No, he keeps going. And then what do we do next?
They take away his good health?
Right. So the adversary. Oh, why did that do that? I guess Satan's gone, folks. We have vanquished Satan. Dang it.
I knew it was that easy.
Oh, there we go. Right? There we go. Maybe we have to go here. Nope. Oh, I know what I think I'll do. Let's see if this works. Okay, it's a miracle. All right, so typically, what are the functions of Satan in the Bible?
He is the tempter, or he
Right.
is the and he's also sort of, well, not in the Bible. He isn't more of a corrupter. He's more of a yeah, he's more of a tempter, and he's sort of a well, that's where the name comes from. The devil's advocate. He proposes the or like sort of like another view.
All right. Like here, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think adversary would cover that. Typically, he accuses. Oh, we already had adversary. So he accuses people of stuff. How do you put that? Different perspective. I like that. Different point of view on things. So he accuses people. In order to accuse, he tempts them. So tempting is a means to an end. Are you familiar with stings that the police run? Do you know what a sting is? Sting operation? Really? All right. So the cops decide, the cops pinch your best friend with some marijuana. So they send your friend to you and say, do you have any marijuana I could buy off of you? And being a friendly sort of person, you sell your friend a little bit of marijuana, and then they arrest you. That's a sting. Does that make sense? I mean, it doesn't make sense, but do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, you know, they like to get online. They love to do this online. They'll find somebody that's, you know, emotionally and mentally challenged, and they're living at home, and they say, you know, I'll show you parts of my body if you'll agree to blow up this, you know, mall or something. Of course, they're going to agree to anything because they won't see body parts. Nobody's ever shown them anything like that before. And they, you know, then they come in the paper. Here's this terrorist we got. Yeah, right. So he tempts, but in order to accuse. He also attacks and persecutes, and also what we might call cosmic thermonuclear war. All right, so these are the various things we see Satan doing in the Bible. Is any of these absent in the book of Job?
He's not really, well, cosmic thermonuclear war, I guess. That's
right. He's not the
that's a
enemy
little bit
of God in this version, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do we scratch out? Ah, here we go. Whereas in Daniel, in the New Testament, he's, you know, well, pacing around like a lion. I mean, in Revelation, you know, it's just carpet bombs and, well, not bombs literally, but, you know, lots of terrible stuff, dragons and whatnot. Here he's not outside of the system attacking it. He's an integral part of the system. It's his job to accuse people when they stand before God's judgment seat. Say, no, they deserve to go to hell. Somebody's got to take that role, right? So he's the district attorney. Now, Job is a kind of literature called a theodicy. Any of you familiar with that term?
Is it related to something like a theocracy, or?
Yes. Theos is the Greek word for
Theos.
It's the Greek word for God. And Dike is the Greek word for justice. Is there a way for me to type Greek?
So would theodicy sort of be like divine justice?
It's a justification of the ways of God to man. That is our old friend Milton's definition of it in Paradise Lost. Here we go. Gotta find the. Ah, there it is. It's Q. Okay, gotta find sigma. There it is, the end sigma. Ah, shoot. We lost our Greek. All right. So why does God need justifying?
Well, I feel like it's justifying mostly so people sort of, or people have true faith in him if it's all justified.
Well, also, what is there about this world we live in that needs justifying? It's what we see happening in the book of Job.
There's sin in the world.
Yes, sin and suffering. We don't mind the sin so much, but we do mind the suffering. And of course, why do the innocent suffer? And the popular answer at the time was they aren't innocent. In fact, it's the most popular answer now. You see somebody homeless, living in the street. Why are they in the street? Well, it's something they did wrong, right? You know, they're on drugs or they're lazy or whatever. And, you know, we've got all kinds of reasons why they deserve to be there. You're suffering because you did something wrong. And that's the role of Job's friends, is to tell him he must have done something wrong. And the book of Job is there to say there is such a thing as innocent suffering. So there was this play, J.B. I believe the guy that wrote it was named McIntyre, but I'm not sure. It's a takeoff of Job. You know, it's a retelling of it in the 60s. And he has this doublet. If God is God, he isn't good. If he's good, he isn't God. Now, what does that mean?
God does not smite the good, and if the good are smitten, I'm going to use that. Then it's God who's not the one who did it.
Well, that's where Job comes out. What's McIntyre's this is the accusation behind the need for a theodicy. If God is God, he isn't good. If he's good, he isn't God. So he's using this God and this one in a special way. What characteristic of God is he talking about? You remember those big theological words, omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent. Which one of those is he talking about here?
Omnipotent or omniscient.
Right. Omnipotent.
Okay.
Because if he's really God, then why does the world suck so much, right? And if he's really good, well, if he's really God, then he must not care very much. If he's really good, then he must not be God. The world, there's this philosophy that this is the best of all possible worlds, because if it could be better, God would have made it better. So this is just the best God could do, right? So that's the accusation. And that sets up the need for a theodicy, which is an answer to that kind of accusation. All right, so Job, why is he suffering?
Job is suffering all because of a bet,
Right.
really.
So how does that make it better? The one way it does kind of make it better is, well, two ways. One, he's not suffering because he's guilty. And so, in addition to feeling bad, there's the guilt that's associated with suffering and pain, and it can relieve you of that. Two, it's not God attacking you himself. Who is really attacking you?
It's the devil.
It's the devil. And so it's not actually God doing the evil thing, it's the devil. This is why you need a pantheon, people. The Hebrews came along, they got rid of all the gods and goddesses but one, and then had God doing everything. So in the Utnapishtim version of Noah, some gods wanted to destroy humanity, right? But there were other gods who wanted to save humanity. With this kind of universe, where it's only one God left, he has to be both. I'm trying to destroy humanity, but I want to just save humanity. It makes him a little split personality. So he finally brought back in some of that old pantheon in the form of Satan, who is not omnipotent, but pretty powerful, right? Does that make sense? Also, is there a way to draw lines? I think so. How do I get that? Drawing. Ugh.
So do you think that the point of Job is to say that God both wants to save the earth and destroy it? He has both intents?
That was Noah, right? And it's a problem. Because why is the same God doing both of these things? Whereas in the other versions of the story, not only in the Sumerian, but also even the Greeks have a version of this story. It's not the same God doing it all, right? It makes it confusing. How do I draw a line? Maybe like that. Oh, I need something that'll circle around.
So it's not the same God doing it all, because in one version, you believe he's trying to destroy them, and then in the other he's trying to save them?
No. In the Hebrew version, you've only got one God, right? So
Yes.
he has to do both the smiting and the protecting, and it makes it confusing. Here we go. I can't really figure this stuff out. So I need a smiley face down and up. What Job does is come along and introduces this new character. So there's only one God, right? But there are sons of God. And some of these sons can be up to mischief, right? Like Ha-Satan. And so it allows us to expand the supernatural realm without doing away with the omnipotence and oneness of God. So that's what makes Satan such a brilliant innovation. Does that make sense? Okay, maybe try that. Nope, that's not going to work. All right, so there are basically two kinds of theodicy. Where are we? Right. Oops, let's get back into English. Why is Castellan so hard to find? So one kind of theodicy is a narrative, which is telling a story. And that's what the book of Job is. Any C.S. Lewis fans?
Like C.S. Lewis.
All right. Have you ever read The Problem of Pain?
No, sir.
Okay, that's his theodicy, right? Or his essay on why suffering is proper, why the world has suffering. And, it has some of these basic answers. Also, it's a veil of soul making. That may be my professor that said that. I don't know if C.S. Lewis said that. But then he's got this other book, A Grief Observed, which is a book he wrote after the death of his wife. And have y'all seen the movie Shadowlands? It's got C.S. Lewis being played by Hannibal Lecter. Who is that guy? Oh yeah, Anthony Hopkins. So this is an older film. Oh crap. Which, yeah, has this middle-aged professor meeting Deborah Winger, and they fall in love, and then she dies. And it's horrible, it's terrible. And all through the movie, you will see clips of him speaking here, there, everywhere to these huge crowds of people about the problem of pain. And pain is the anvil upon which God hammers out the souls of humanity, and it's all very dramatic and very British professory. And then his wife dies, and all of that just evaporates. It's just like, oh my God, this is awful. I can't stand it. And so this is the problem of pain from the perspective of somebody who's in pain. And it's horrible, but he eventually works through it to a happy place. So that's the thing about a narrative. In order for a theodicy narrative to work, you have to have a happy ending. So what happens to Job at the end?
Job is sort of kind of given back what was taken from him.
Right. Although, of course, can your children come back to you?
No.
No, all you can do is give him more kids, which they do. And more, the land, you can, start having crops again, stuff like that. So they provide a happy ending so that we can say it worked out. As bad as it was, it worked out. All right. Any questions about Job before we move on to Jonah? I wonder if I have notes for this. Maybe I've got notes somewhere. Oh, here we go. There's the Satan. Here's my other stuff. Okay. So yes, no cosmic thermonuclear war. All right, so this is what I needed, my Jonah chart. Jonah is a simple looking story, which is surprisingly complex. And this is narratology we're talking about here with this chart that I have. Who is the author of Jonah? by traditionally who wrote Jonah? It's not,
Who wrote Jonah?
yeah, it's not that hard, folks.
Was it Jonah?
Jonah, yes. Who is the narrator of Jonah?
I guess it would sort of be Jonah.
Yes. And who is the main character of Jonah?
Jonah.
All right. So Jonah wrote it. Jonah narrates it. Jonah is the main character.
Self-insert.
What's that?
He's a self-insert.
Yes. What is a self-insert? That sounds good.
Basically, it's somebody it's a character that stands in for the author.
Okay. Oh, yeah. They have those sometimes in shows, which makes it complicated because do the Jonahs agree?
No, not completely.
Not at all, right? The character of Jonah, what's he think of the people at Nineveh?
I don't want to go near them.
Right, I hate them, right? What about the narrator?
I must do this.
Well,
But maybe it's because the narrator...
the narrator is saying he should want to do this, right? You should want this. These are people. What's wrong with you? So the character Jonah and the narrator of the book of Jonah are on the outs with each other. Okay, where's my, need this again. And this is what makes Jonah a difficult book to process sometimes, is because there is this disagreement. Oh, I know. Do I have, what's the word? Here we go. There's this huge debate within Judaism that has carried over into Christianity and Islam, xenophobia versus xenophilia. Okay, so what's xenophobia?
Fear of foreigners.
Right. Xenophilia.
Love.
Yeah, it's
Right.
the exact opposite.
Yes, philia is the Greek word for love. Phobia is fear, but fear, hatred, loathing. Which one of these words would describe America at this point in our history?
Kind of a bit of both. I mean,
Well,
it's
who's
a
in
melting pot of
charge?
different people, but
Xenophobic.
Yeah, the
we're
xenophobes
not
are in
letting
charge.
Mexicans in.
What's that?
We're not letting Mexicans in, so we're sort of xenophobic.
Or any,
Also-
we call them illegals. In fact, a large number of the people we've got locked in concentration camps are perfectly legal. Trump just doesn't like them. So we're in a xenophobic period. We're hoping that within the next month, we may be able to change that, or I am. But the xenophobes will still be among us, right? There'll still be this debate. And this debate goes back to the Bible. Remember how we talked about the various books of the Old Testament being separate scrolls at this point? So you make your scroll, you roll it up, you put it in your scripture box. There's no expectation within Judaism that they're all going to agree with each other. This was written by Moses. This was written by Ezra. This was written by Nehemiah. And so you've got this debate going on within the scrolls of the Old Testament. Joshua, the book of Joshua, how do they treat outsiders? What did they do at Jericho?
Oh, Jericho. Yeah, no, nobody came in. And
Right.
then you had to walk across the wall and they all fell. after a magical trumpet, or I'm pretty
Right,
sure.
but what happens after the wall falls? What do we do when we get in the city? Do we make them our slaves?
No, I think they embraced them with open arms after that. I don't fully remember the story
They stabbed
of
them
Jericho.
with their swords. They killed
Okay,
every man,
yeah.
every
All right,
woman,
yeah.
every child, every baby, the cows, the dogs, the cats. They burned
I was
the
a little bit off.
buildings. They burned the jewelry and the gold and the ingots and the whatnot. The only thing they saved was the olive tree, because, the olive symbolizes peace. It's called Charon, which we translate with the word Holocaust. So they carried out a Holocaust against the inhabitants of Jericho, because that's foreigners, right? Judges, Ezra, Nehemiah, they're all right there with them. Ezra and Nehemiah get back from Babylon, and they start building a temple with the people they brought back with them from Babylon. And the Jews who are there say, well, why won't you let us help? Well, we don't know who you've been screwing for the last 80 years. And, that's it, and they don't get along. And they say, well, we don't know who you were with over there in Babylon. What are you talking about? So they didn't even like people who were also Jewish, but they weren't quite as sure about them. On the other side of the debate is Ruth, where a foreign woman marries two Jewish men, not at the same time. And she becomes the ancestor of David and Jesus. And so Jonah is the one book which is xenophobic, phobia versus xenophilia. We're going to have both of these contesting. Okay, so Jonah the character, which one of these does he embody?
Xenophobia.
Right. And just Jonah the narrator, who does he exemplify?
Xenophilia.
Xenophilia. Do we have the 4? Here we go. Okay. Oh, right. There are the levels of it. Do I have the chapters? All right. So the outline, well, the narration in the issues going on here, somewhat complex. It would be easier if it was Bob and Ted and Carol and Jonah, right? Bob's the writer, Jonah's the book. Oh, and the book is named Jonah. So there's Jonah the book, Jonah the physical author, Jonah the narrator, and Jonah the character. So that's 4. The outline is pretty simple, though. What happens in chapter 1? God commands him to go to Nineveh, which is to the east. And what does he do instead?
He takes a ship and I'm going to say goes west.
Yes.
He was going to a specific city.
Tarshish,
I remember that.
which is in Spain. And why wouldn't he go further than that? Because if you go any further, you fall off the edge of the world. So he's going to the other end of the world to get away from his command. And what happens to the boat?
The boat is suffering from massive storms. Everyone's freaking out.
Yeah, the sailors are freaking out. What are they doing to try to survive this?
They're just praying to all their individual gods.
They're praying, but they're also taking some action. What is that?
I think they were trying to throw off everything.
Right. Get rid of the dead weight, right? All this cargo, we can, live to sell another day. And they finally wake up Jonah. They say, what's wrong with you? Why are you sleeping through this? And pray to your God. And what does Jonah fess up to?
Is that all of it is his fault? This whole storm is because of him.
All my fault. And do they immediately get angry and want to throw him overboard?
No, it's Jonah at Jonah's behest. He's telling them to throw him overboard.
Oh, you've got to throw me overboard. They're saying, no, we don't want to do this. What's this tell us about Gentiles? Dirty, rotten foreigner dogs.
Those people, they're not really um, they really I don't know how to word this.
They're God's children too, right?
Yeah.
They're decent people. A lot of times better than the xenophobes who are attacking them, right? Okay, chapter 2. What happens to Jonah that's rather interesting?
Once he gets thrown out, God sends a massive whale to consume Jonah, where he stays for 3 days.
Right, he's swallowed up. He's in either a whale or a fish, depending on the version part of the Bible you're reading. And this is the part that most interests most people, right? What do they want to talk about when they talk about Jonah?
Everyone always talks about the whale.
Exactly. But the whale's only chapter 2. So he prays, oh God, let me out of here. If you do this, I'll do what you say. And at the end of chapter 2, the whale's so sick of all the praying that he vomits. And Jonah's vomited up on land. So what does he do in chapter 3?
He actually goes to Nineveh
Yeah.
and tells them to repent.
Hellfire and brimstone, right? The end is near. And then finally 4.
Well, after they repent, Jonah goes to sleep. There's a plant that rises up during the night and then withers, and he gets hot, and then he has he throws a little fit because
he has a colloquy with God, right?
Yeah.
All right. So let's take a look then at chapter 4. But it displeased Jonah exceedingly, and he was very angry. And he prayed unto the Lord and said, I pray thee, O Lord, was this not my saying when I was yet in my country? You're going to take pity on them. I just know you are. And then God said, dost thou well to be angry? So he went out of the city, sat on the east side of the city. There made him a booth, sat under it in the shadow. Okay, so this summer I needed to meet somebody, but it was COVID. So we went out and talked on the porch under this tin roof. And what do you imagine it was like under that tin roof in the middle of July in Louisiana under the hot sun? I mean, we were out of the sun. Was it cool?
No, that Louisiana doesn't do cool.
It was like we were baking, man. You know what would cool things off a lot? Leaves. It's 10 degrees cooler under a tree than it is out in the sun, as far as what we experience. So God prepares a gourd that it might be a shadow over his head and deliver him from his grief. So Jonah was exceedingly glad of the gourd. But then God prepared a worm when the morning rose the next day, and it smote the gourd that it withered. And the sun did rise. God prepared a vehement east wind, and the sun beat down on the head of Jonah that he fainted and wished in himself to die. He said, it is better for me to die than to live. And God said to Jonah, dost thou well to be angry for the gourd? And he said, I do well to be angry, even unto death. I mean, if you're just judging him by the way he talks, what age would you think Jonah is?
Say he's probably he is very young.
Well, let's put a specific age on it. What kind of person talks like this?
Like a toddler.
Well, toddlers, not, they may throw a fit, but they don't have the verbal capacity. He's more like a 14-year-old, right? He's got that teenage kind of vibe coming off of him. Of course, when we get to be angry old men, we all sound like that. But I do well to be angry, even unto death. You don't let me do anything. I want the car. Why can't I have a car? And then said the Lord, thou hast had pity on the gourd, for the which thou hast not labored, neither madest it grow, which came up in a night and perished in a night. And should I not spare Nineveh, that great city wherein are more than 600,000 persons that cannot discern between their right hand and their left, and also much cattle? So this is called in rhetoric Okay, so what's more important, a gourd or 600,000 people and much cattle?
It's the people.
Yeah, according to God, thank you, it's the people. He said, wait, you're worried about this gourd. I'm worried about these people. Why aren't you worried about them? You know, I mean, do y'all remember, are y'all old enough to remember Benghazi?
I feel like I've heard of that.
Well, if you were older when this had happened, for 4 years, 5 maybe, all we heard about was Benghazi, Benghazi. 4 Americans died at Benghazi. How did 4 Americans die at Benghazi? 4 Americans, 4, I say 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, count them, 4 Americans died at Benghazi. And what are the people that said that saying about 200,000 Americans dead from coronavirus?
We don't really care when it's because of us.
Right. YOLO, nothing matters, 600,000, 200,000. If for us to get to herd immunity, which is the, government's way of dealing with this at this point, we would have to have over 2 million Americans die from COVID. And all of a sudden, the people that were just totally fixated on four Americans, I say, 200,000, you got to crack some eggs to make an omelet. That must be getting hungry. My major professor when I was at seminary was this guy named David Perkins. And this was the 80s. 10 years earlier, he had been a pastor still. And as a Southern Baptist preacher, he had gone to interview at a church in Mississippi about being their pastor. Maybe you want to come be at our church. And so they had shown him around town, and he had heard them bragging about how they'd kept it all nice and white because they were still trying to keep segregated at the time. In fact, they're kind of still trying to keep segregated now. And then he got to the, after the meet and greet, he just sat down with the committee in a circle. And one of the ladies said, Brother David, what do you think about the whale in Jonah? Was it real or was it a myth? Because that's what we think about when we think about Jonah, right? And he said, I think we distract ourselves with that whale while we ignore the fact that the whole point of the book of Jonah is that we should love people regardless of what nation they come from, what language they speak, or what race, or whether they're black or white. And the committee just kind of got quiet. And one of us said, ooh, I guess he got us. Oh, because had they learned the lesson of Jonah at that Baptist church in Mississippi? Were they loving their neighbor regardless of their neighbor's race? No, they were racist, white supremacist, probably some of them in the Klan. This stuff never got through to them. What other book have we read that's very similar to the message of Jonah?
I'd say Genesis.
Yes, Genesis. I am my brother's keeper. What about those horrible people over at Nineveh? Those are your brother too. Oh shit, we've gone over. All right, sorry about that, folks. Any questions? I was so impressed with my talking that I didn't notice the time. I'll try to watch the clock a little better next time. Y'all have a good weekend. And be kind to your fellow human beings.